Africa Today, thank you so much for joining us and always being part of us. My name is Nahaba Kajura, but first to the headlines. MP Segirinya detained on treason inciting violence charges. Museveni Chief Justice Owiny Dollo clash as president insists on no bail for murderers. Sudan's Burhan vows army reforms after coup attempt. And in our sports today, Hasuli team edged Chirunda in first ever UPL All-Star duo at MTN Omondi Stadium. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. We start with one of our top stories. Now, police has said Kawempe North MP Mohamed Segirinya is being detained at Special Investigations Division in Chireka on fresh charges of treason and incitement to violence. We have more on this report. The MP was rearrested at Chigo Prison on Monday, hours after the High Court in Kampala granted him bail on 6 counts, including murder, attempted murder, and aiding and abetting terrorism. Speaking to the media on Monday evening, police spokesperson Mr. Fred Enanga said that Honorable Segirinya Mohamed was also rearrested on fresh charges of treason and incitement to violence by the Joint Security Task Team of investigators and was transferred to the Special Investigations Division in Chireka for further statement recording in action. His rearrest came hours after President Museveni slammed courts of law for granting bail to murder suspects and vowed to fight it politically and legally. In a terse address at the Benedicto Chiwanuka Memorial Lecture at High Court building in Kampala, where soldiers dragged out and later killed the former Chief Justice 49 years ago, President Museveni also demanded that convicted murderers should automatically suffer death by hanging. Just like his Machindia West counterpart Alan Sewanyana, Segirinya was rearrested as he left Chigo Prison, where they were remanded on September 8th. The duo is accused of having a hand in the recent spate of killings in Greater Masaka sub-region that left close to 30 people dead. They were charged with 6 counts, including murder, attempted murder, and aiding and abetting terrorism. Reporting for TV Africa News, Nahawe Kajura. Well, thank you so much, our reporter. Moving on in our top stories, President Museveni has walked a line different from the Chief Justice Alphonse Owiny Dollo in regards of the issue of bail to people accused of being involved in murder. We have more on this report. Speaking during the 4th annual Ben Chiwanuka Memorial Lecture at the High Court grounds in Kampala, the president insisted that those accused of murder should not be granted bail. The president insisted that it is not fair for someone accused of having killed another person to be seen walking free on streets after being granted bail. He noted that the issue of granting bail to people accused of murder will make the public lose trust in government and especially the judiciary. In his speech, the Chief Justice Alphonse Owiny Dollo said that many factors are considered by judicial officers before granting bail to accused people, but insisted bail is a constitutional right. He said rules for grant of bail are set out and many factors are considered by judicial officers to ensure the accused person will turn back before granting bail. Moving on, Opposition Democratic Party has urged government to allow places of worship seat half the capacity of their congregants. This follows last week's presidential address where places of worship were opened but only allowed to seat 200 congregants. We have more on this report.
Addressing a news conference at their party headquarters in Kampala, the party spokesperson Okolelo Opio said DP welcomes the idea of opening up worship centers. However, the capacity of the place of worship should be considered and allowed to host half the seating capacity in the same way it was done in public transport.
Therefore, there is no reason why Namireme Cathedral, for example, or the Kampala Mosque can seat 200 congregants, and yet its capacity is over 4,000. Let the churches seat half the capacity of their congregants.
In his last week's address, where he aimed at easing on the lockdown, President Museveni, among others, allowed places of worship to open, but only seat 200 congregants. On the other hand, DP has continued to remind government to consider reopening of schools in order to save the future generation of the country.
In our opinion, as Democratic Party, we think it is unreasonable for our children to keep home for the next 4 months, and yet sports betting centers are open. We are afraid that once you open the sports betting centers and you leave schools closed for whatever period of time, it means that when our students are idle, they will definitely engage in practices of betting.
Nalgo Muyingo, Africa Today.
Well, thank you so much, our reporter. We take a quick break. We shall come back with the international news. Welcome back from the break. You're still watching TV Africa The Right to Know. In our international news today, the general who heads Sudan's ruling transitional authority on Sunday pledged to reform the army days after a failed coup. We have more on this report.
Speaking at the opening of a military school in Khartoum, Sovereign Council Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan said that they are going to reorganize the armed forces where partisan activities are banned in the army. He added that the armed forces are committed to holding elections on the date fixed for ending the transition in 2023 and leave the political scene and focus on its role of protecting the country. Sudan is led by a civilian military administration under an August 2019 power-sharing deal signed after President Omar al-Bashir's ouster by the military in April that year following mass protests against his iron-fisted rule. Sudan's government said it thwarted a September 21st coup attempt involving military officers and civilians linked to the regime of imprisoned Bashir. At least 11 officers were among those arrested. A transition to full civilian rule has remained shaky, reeling from deep fragmentation among political factions, economic wars, and a receding role for civilian leaders.
Well, thank you so much, our reporter Nalugo. Moving on, Burkina Faso's ruling party, the People's Movement for Progress, MPP, appointed Bala Alassane Sakande as its new leader after an extraordinary congress in the capital, Ouagadougou. Bala Alassane Sakande was previously president of National Assembly. Take a look at the story. The former president of the National Assembly, Bala Alassane, is a longtime colleague of President Roch Marc Christian. In his acceptance speech, the new MPP president promised that his mission would be to keep the unity of the party. The ruling party has also appointed a new National Executive Bureau comprised of 95 members. The new MPP president replaces Simon, one of the founders of the party who took the reins in 2017. In his farewell speech, he said it's now time to hand over to a new generation. Bala Alassane Sakande, who is a former bank executive, is considered by observers as the potential successor of President Kabore, whose second and final term ends in 2025. Moving on, Colonel Theoneste Bagosora, who was nicknamed the Himmler of Rwanda or the Colonel of Apocalypse and became the mastermind of the 1994 genocide in Rwanda, died on Saturday at the age of 80 in Mali, where he was serving his sentence of genocide, crimes against humanity and war crimes. We have more on this report.
Initially sentenced to life imprisonment in 2008 by the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda based in Arusha, Tanzania, he had his sentence reduced to 35 years in prison on appeal in 2011. The man who in 1994 held the position of Director of Cabinet at the Rwandese Ministry of Defense has always denied the role he is believed to have played in the genocide that left 800,000 people dead in 100 days, according to the United Nations, mainly among the Tutsi minorities. In front of his judges, he has also denied having affirmed 15 years earlier, in 1993 in the same city of Arusha, that he was returning to Rwanda to prepare the apocalypse, slamming the door on negotiations between the Rwandese government and the Tutsi rebels of the Rwanda Patriotic Front. During these talks in Tanzania, he was in constant conflict with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Boniface Ngurinzira, whom he accused of making too many concessions to the rebels. Ngurinzira was assassinated on April 11, 1994 by soldiers 5 days after the attack on the plane of President Juvenal Habyarimana, which triggered the first massacres of the Tutsi and moderate Hutus.
Well, thank you so much, our reporter. Moving on, Economic Freedom Fighters launched its manifesto on Sunday. The party, which often describes itself as an anti-imperialist and leftist movement, did not hold back in emphasizing the party's capabilities of picking up the slack and what he called the current incapable local government. We have more on this report.
Thousands of people dressed in red and black came to hear Julius Malema, leader of Economic Freedom Fighters, as the party launches its manifesto ahead of local elections on 1st November. He said that their manifesto is based on the truthful observation that their people are landless, jobless, is based on the truthful observation that local government is incapable, and is based on truthful observation that many people in South Africa still don't have access to water. The party vowed to create jobs for youth instead of giving tenders to the connected few, since the party's manifesto is based on 7 pillars for economic freedom. The party in power launched its official campaign on Monday, even if the head of state, Cyril Ramaphosa, who is also the head of the ANC, has been taking public trips for the last 10 days, dressed in green and yellow.
Well, thank you so much, our reporter. Let's go for a quick break. We shall come back with more news. Welcome back from the break. You're still watching TV Africa, the right to know. Now let's turn your attention to our business news today. Founded by the Phoenicians and later conquered by the Romans, the ancient city of Leptis Magma in Libya is often described as the Rome of Africa and was classified by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. Now in 2016, this site along with 4 others were placed on the list of endangered sites. We have more on this report.
Ezzeddin Ahmed Fagi says that the threats that the city faces are indirect and come in different forms, such as the lack of supplies, which never existed in the first place, the fact that archaeological missions have been interrupted, the lack of means and support from the government virtually non-existent. This ancient city, built on a site of about 50 hectares, is a must for tourists. According to the head of the site's control committee, these ruins hold enormous potential and could be a magnet for visitors and boost the national economy. Overlooking the Mediterranean and situated 120 kilometers away from the capital Tripoli, Leptis Magna has escaped the worst of the political turmoil engulfing the country since the end of Muammar Gaddafi's regime. Abdusalam Weber, a Libyan visitor, said that the city was founded by Romans and Phoenicians and is remembered for its beautiful and its archaeological sites and its warmth. Political instability have put an end to various European archaeological missions, mainly Italian and French. Despite its potential for the powers that be, Leptis Magna remains a distant concern.
Away from business, in our health news today, Uganda Breweries Limited has rolled out Pfizer COVID-19 vaccines at major bars in Kampala to support the government's efforts of vaccinating at least 4.8 million people before fully reopening the economy. We have more on this report.
According to a statement from UBL, Pfizer vaccination started on Tuesday at a number of popular Kampala chill spots and bars, including Chadondo Rugby Grounds, Fusion Auto Spa in Munyonyo, among others. The company said in a tweet that for all UBL vaccination centers, Samito Chadondo Rugby Club, Alchemist, Levos, Nexus Bar, Mari Fifi Gardens Motondwe, and Fusion Auto Spa in Munyonyo, they shall be rolling out the Pfizer vaccine and advised all those planning for a second AstraZeneca shot to hold on. The company announced last week that they had partnered with the Ministry of Health to carry out vaccination drives around the country so that hospitality or entertainment sector can be reopened soon. According to the Health Ministry data, at least 1.9 million people have so far been vaccinated against COVID-19. Health Ministry Permanent Secretary Dr. Diana Atwini announced Monday that they had also set up several other vaccination centers around schools and parks in Kampala. Dr. Atwini urged the public to get vaccinated so that the country can reopen soon.
In our sports news today, former Uganda Cranes legend Paul Edwin Hasule and Jimmy Chirunda were honored during the first ever All-Star game played at the MTN Omondi Stadium, Lugogo. We have more on this report.
The MTN Omondi Stadium in Lugogo, in the heart of Ugandan capital city, which is home of 13-time Uganda Premier League champions Kampala Capital City Authority, was deservedly picked to host the inaugural Uganda Premier League All-Stars duel with the fallen football legends. Both former Uganda Cranes legends Paul Edwin Hasule and Jim Kirunda were honored. The All-Star teams were therefore named before Hasule and Kirunda and coached by former Uganda Cranes great players Sam Simbwa and Mike Mtevi respectively. Team Hasule emerged winners with a 2-0 victory courtesy of a goal in either half from an own goal by forward Semakula Sekamate Kayongo and the second half super substitute Joseph Semuju. Sekamate was unfortunate to brush into his own net past goalkeeper Ali Mwerusi off a teasing corner delivery from Team Hasule captain Sadiq Cheyune in the 39th minute. Each member on Team Kirunda was rewarded with a cash prize of 500,000, with the head coach taking home 3 million shillings. Team Hasule players got 1 million shillings, with the head coach Sam Simbwa taking 5 million shillings and a flat television screen. The day's most valuable player was Team Kirunda's captain Bobosi Byaruhanga.
Well, thank you so much, reporter. Before we end the bulletin, let's have a recap of our top stories. MP Segirinya detained on treason inciting violence charges. Museveni Chief Justice Owinyi Dolo clash as president insists on no bail for murderers. Sudan's Burhan vows army reforms after coup attempt. And in our sports today, Hasule team edged Chirunda in first ever UPL All-Star duel at MTN Omondi Stadium. Thank you so much for being a loyal audience from where we started from. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We shall keep updating you. It is TV Africa, the right to know.